Dr. Hill, yesterday I think a lot of Americans were scratching their heads as Ambassador Sondland testified that on September 9, he calls the President of the United States and just says broadly, "What do you want from Ukraine?" And the President says, "There's no quid pro quo. There's no quid pro quo." It's like being pulled over for speeding and being asked, "Do you know how fast you're going?" and saying, "I didn't rob the bank. I didn't rob the bank." But your testimony today is that on July 10 of this year, you told one of the President's lawyers that you had concerns that a White House meeting was linked to investigations. Is that right?
That's correct, based on what Ambassador Sondland said in the wardroom.
And so as early as July 10, the President's lawyers had knowledge that there was at least concern by a presidential employee about a linkage. Is that right?
That's correct.
Dr. Hill, just like you, we are trying to account for all the President's men. You had that same concern when you saw Mr. Sondland's emails and you saw people who were outside the channels that you had been working on. So I want to walk you through something you told us earlier. You said that you have evidence that as recently as this year, President Trump believed someone named Cash was the Ukraine director. Is that right?
It's not really evidence. And look, I want to be very clear about this. I was asked a question about this in my deposition. I did not raise it. And to be honest, I was surprised that I was asked the question.
But you heard that name Cash. Is that right?
I did, but again, it was in passing, and I explained the circumstances in which this came up. But I was asked a question in the course of my deposition about it.
And the only person at the time who worked at the National Security Council was Kash Patel. Is that right?
It was the only person that I could think of.
And Kash Patel, prior to working for the National Security Council from 2017 to 2018, worked for Ranking Member Nunes. Is that right?
I actually only found that out after the fact.
And
because I wondered why I was being asked about him, so I went and looked this up.
And Dr. Hill, you cautioned us on the dangers of members of this committee, perhaps peddling any Ukrainian conspiracy theories that could benefit Russia. And I want to ask you if you have heard the name Lev Parnas of Ukraine, someone in this investigation who was influencing President Trump and Rudy Giuliani about some of the debunked conspiracy theories you referenced earlier.
I have heard his name, yes.
Are you aware that Mr. Parnas was indicted on October 10 for making foreign contributions to Republicans in U.S. elections?
I am aware of those reports, yes.
Are you aware of yesterday's Daily Beast story reporting the indicted Ukrainian Lev Parnas has been working with Ranking Member Devin Nunes on Mr. Nunes's overseas investigations?
I am not aware of that.
Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to put into the record the Daily Beast story. Lev Parnas helped Rep. Devin Nunes's investigations from yesterday. First two paragraphs reading, Lev Parnas, an indicted associate of Rudy Giuliani, helped arrange meetings and calls in Europe for Rep. Devin Nunes in 2018. Parnas' lawyer, Ed McMahon, told the Daily Beast. Nunes' aide, Derek Harvey, participated in the meetings, the lawyer said, which were arranged to help Nunes' investigative work. McMahon didn't specify what those investigations entailed.
Without objection.
Mr. Chairman, you have been falsely accused throughout these proceedings by the ranking member as being a quote-unquote fact witness. Now, if this story is correct, the ranking member may have actually been projecting. And in fact, he may be the fact witness if he is working with indicted individuals around our investigation. But I want to go to what this is really all about. First, it's your credibility, Mr. Holmes. And can you tell us and confirm that in 2014, you received the William Rivkin Constructive Dissent Award from the Obama administration State Department?
Yes, sir.
And that was for dissent that you brought up against an administration policy, is that right?
That's right.
Congratulations, and thank you for speaking up in the way that you did. But what we're really here about is what you're working on in Ukraine. And I want you to take a look at the picture. Who do you see in the foreground of that photo?
President Zelensky.
That's a photograph in May 2019, where newly elected President Zelensky visited the Luhansk region in eastern Ukraine. It was his first visit to the front lines of Donbass as president. Can you just tell tax-paying Americans why it's so important that our hard-earned tax-paying dollars help President Zelensky and the men standing beside him fight against Russia in this hot war?
Absolutely, sir. President Zelensky was elected on an overwhelming majority to defend Ukrainian interests. This is at a time when Ukrainians are defending their sovereignty, their territorial integrity on Ukrainian soil from Russian-backed soldiers who are attacking them. As I said, 14,000 Ukrainian lives lost in this war so far. As I mentioned, a few this week already. And this is a hot war. This is not a frozen conflict. People are shooting at each other and dying, being injured every single week. And despite the ongoing war, they're still trying to pursue peace. President Zelensky, even right now, is trying to pursue a summit meeting with President Putin in order to try to bring this war to a conclusion so that they can move on with all the difficult things they need to do in terms of building the economy and reforming the judiciary and whatnot. And I want to add just one other thing, sir, if I may. Mr. Turner had suggested earlier that it somehow embarrassed President Zelensky. I have the deepest respect for President Zelensky. This is a guy of Jewish background from a post-Soviet industrial suburb in southern Ukraine who made himself one of the most popular entertainers in the country and somehow got elected president, and he's not going to miss that opportunity. This is a Ukrainian patriot. This is a tough guy, and frankly, he withstood a lot of pressure for a very long time, and he didn't give that interview. I have the deepest respect for him. The Ukrainian people also have the deepest respect for him. They've chosen him to help deliver the full measure of promise of their revolution of dignity, and I think he merits all of our respect.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to enter the May 27 photograph depicted on the screen into the record.
Without objection.